Kitty with Kitty Cat. Oh, yeah, look at that. This. I've got to pause for a moment. Pause. Pause. Oh, this is lovely. It's lovely. Oh, yeah. I don't know what is she doing. Oh, she's always sucking on Bear. She's always, and Bear is really enjoying the company. Oh, yeah. Oh, oh, this is lovely. See, this is better than my poor cat Bear sat in the kitchen on the counter, totally depressed, and here he is. I don't know what's Bear been recently. He doesn't like me picking him up. He's been really grumpy, but he, as long as they play during the morning, then they have a cat nap, and then they play during the a little teeny little bit in the afternoon, and then they relax, and then they play a little bit more at night, and then boom, they relax. They've been relaxing now for about 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Yeah. Anyway, I got some ideas. Um, though some ideas that I have sort of tinkering with before, like add a PL2X decoder to the side surrounds in multiple arrays. But okay, I've got a different approach. Got a different approach to this. This would require an additional switching circuit to be put in a rack so that you can do switching between, say, playing Dolby Atmos um, signals, usually this pan through where the sound is usually going from one speaker to the other through the side walls. The back wall speakers are totally irrelevant because it's usually the side. They're usually made up of, or mostly in most homes, would consist up to 3 speakers going along each side wall. But say, for example, you play Titanic, it's only a 6-channel mix. I'm not interested in the Atmos version because I can only imagine the sounding horror of how appalling that would probably sound. But with the theatrical mix, the 6-channel, typically the surrounds in my room would normally play about 8 speakers going along, 3 down the side wall and then 2 on the back, and that will be playing what's called a left half, right half sound configuration. And so it's basically every speaker's getting the same signal. It's not really doing much. It's just doing the same static sound. So basically, think of it like my hand. It's just doing the same sound on the side and on the back. So anyway, so I was thinking, why not if put a PL2X, an AVR, they're very cheap, so you just get all the older generation that have RCA outputs as well as the internal amplifiers, because you have to use the RCAs on this. You can't, otherwise, if you want to do some switching the audio back to play Dolby Atmos with the pan through sound, so the sounds are basically moving like that rather than the same signal just doing that on 3 speakers. It's doing that, but very, very rarely, very rarely. Um, so the first front array of the side surrounds, so they'll be up here. They're usually designated as number. I think I should know this crying out loud. I think they're usually designated like number 1, and then the 0 would be a little bit more in the middle, where that's usually commonly used for the um, surround signal. If the storm processor isn't configured to duplicate Dolby Stereo, the Dolby Stereo Matrix, Dolby Stereo Discrete, um, so that sound goes along the sidewall and on the back, same signal. So I was thinking, okay, you need a switch, you need something so you'll be able to do some manual switching, um, so you can switch back to like a normal kind of default mode for the Atmos signals, blah blah blah. As well as you have another theatre mode on a Storm processor. So you have theatre mode, so one for theatre mode for Dolby Stereo surround configuration. Okay, so the first front of the sidewall surround speaker would have would be the main, like say the main output on the AVR, that would the extra AVR that would be connected to the processor, and then you use those main outputs that would go to there, and then next would be the side surround output on the AVR, and that would then go to the next set of speakers. But then I started to see the problem here, Houston. Got a main B on the boat. Master alarm off. So I thought, oh, let's see. That means the next signal, which would be the rear back, would go to the side ones near to the corner. That wouldn't make sense because they got to go literally to the back. Um, in other words, to steer the signal or what the decoder sees coming into it, and then the vector steering of if there is anything going on within that stereo sound field, and it would think, oh, right, there's a signal here. I think it should go here and steer it to that appropriate, I wouldn't say appropriate, to that speaker or to that channel speaker output. I just got to think here. I wouldn't be able to actually use this in my system because I haven't got any rack space left. Um, so anyone else could try this if they got a Storm processor. Um, if they got an ISP32, that is. If you got an ISP, if you got an ISR20, completely useless. It wouldn't work. You got to have separate inputs and be able to do other things with it because you can't do any of this for that with the main processor itself. It's just not feasible because they have thought about designing all that into the processor. Yeah, yeah. Have I heard the saying? Must I always do this myself? Anyway, in any case, so let me think. So on a PL2X, you've got the two main outputs because you use the input signal going to it, and then you switch it to ProLogic 2X, and then you use the main outputs, and that go to the first set of surround speakers on the sidewall, and then you got the side output, which those side outputs, if you know how a PL2X works and how it usually is working in unusually its normal configuration, but this isn't a normal thing now, is it? Now, is it now? So, um, let me see. There will be the sensor signal on that processor. Um, but what information it gets in the sound field in the stereo surround will be basically a mono, like phantom signal, probably taken from, I don't know, depends where the logic steering is look what it's looking at. I don't think it'd be possible to even put that signal on the very so down on the back wall, side of the side wall speakers down at near towards the back of the room, not on the back wall like that, but on the side near to the corner. You could put a Y lead on it and then send a signal, so it's just basically duplicating a mono signal, which would sound like a phantom sound, and then put the maybe try then the rear signal of the Logic's Pro Logic 2X, and then put that onto the back. But you need two different other additional things in a rack to do manual switching, because you need to have there is a Behringer that's a multi-channel. It's got one, two, three, four. It's got four inputs, and it's got an array of how many outputs? One, two, three. I think it's six or eight outputs. It depends on how you design it. There are XLR outputs. There are XLR in and outputs on it. I forgot what the unit's called, because I've only got one of those Behringers, and I was going to use it for some other purpose in the past. It's somewhere over there in the room now because I've taken it out the rack. But you would probably need two of those, so that you can switch the audio signals, or because the XLR outputs from the Storm processor would be XLR, and then when you're using say like an Onkyo, that's only RCA, that's unbalanced audio, so you only need to do some basic soldering on the XLR connectors with a positive and ground connection. That's all you need. You still get a clean signal, so you won't get any unless unless the AVR is completely knackered and it's producing a which would be a grounding issue. Anyway, it should work. Basically, it would just make, say, something like Titanic, and and that surround array would go from something like that to something like that. It would start having movement in the signal. Whether that whether that's James Cameron's intent, otherwise he can go and sit in his mum's basement with his AI technology. Um, at least it would give it movement rather than it just being plain static. Otherwise, with a putting Titanic through the Storm audio processor and using the what do you call it, the DSU, um, that would kind of be like adding like a similar to a Pro Logic 2X. It'll only be doing sound on the side array, the side wall, and then the back. But those signals, those three speakers in my room, would only be one, two, three. They'd just be doing that. They won't be doing that. They won't be moving independently. Even though it's a stereo mix on the surrounds. Um, it's what's going on within it. Is there anything extra? It's like the heart of the surround ocean has many secrets in its matrix steering. And it's just plain just, exploring. Otherwise, most people would still be listening to the same bloody same signal in their home. Um, this could have been easily done in the cinema years ago. They could have easily done that on a dub stage, just messing around and thinking, well, we mix this into, we put these signals in, we got certain layer track here that's got a specific signal in it, but then Pro Logic 2 didn't, Pro Logic 2 existed around the time of, hang on, No, it didn't. Didn't even exist then. It was just ProLogic. And so even if you put a ProLogic decoder on there, 1997, it wouldn't really do a whole lot. It'd do a little, but two ProLogic 2X, ProLogic 2, I didn't come around until around early 2000s, and then a few years later, ProLogic 2X. A few years later, ProLogic 2Z. Um, but if you can imagine if they mixed the stereo surround to today, which is feasible, and then do ProLogic 2Xing with it, and then all you need is another, and then they just say, here you need a diagram, this is how you connect it all up, and then enjoy. That's as simple as that. And then it'll make the sound move around a little bit rather than just listening to a plain static. But then most people with their home cinemas have only got probably one speaker each side will, or maybe two or three, um, but don't know quite how to use a storm or trim off. Um, yeah, yeah, that's just about it. I think anyone else knows what I'm talking about would say, I know what you mean. I just haven't got the room to put the damn bloody AVR. I mean, the one, I wouldn't stick it in the room because it'd just be a big box and I wouldn't know where to put it. Um, and just as and the same, I wouldn't have anywhere to put it in the kitchen because there's just no space in those racks to take something that's about that size. What about one, two, three, about six U frame. I think it's about a six U frame, so I haven't got any bloody room for the damn thing. Too bad they can't make it a bit smaller. And then I can just sort of like, yeah, I could slip it all in. And if it was all XLR, it'd make it quick and convenient. Because then all I have to do is just do some replugging of the XLR connectors through an additional box, and then it'll all be up and running within a few hours. So, yeah, because you can't really use that what do you call it um, that upmixer thing, ESU thing, to make those side surrounds kind of move like that. It just wouldn't do it. They'll still be playing the same static. They'll still be playing the same signal, and they'll just be doing that. The other speakers will be doing something else, the front wires or whatever. I find the front wires pretty lame. I think they're just completely useless. But, hmm, yeah. Um, and what happens if you add a PL2X to a PL2X? So if you got two PL2X AVRs, what happens when you output a signal from the side surround and then you plug it in to the next AVR inputs and then you use the output? So I'm kind of curious what the signal sees, what it would sound like in terms of crosstalk. Does it minimize? Does it improve? Does it sound? Is it still the same? I'm kind of curious myself because I've never tried that. Mm, could it extend or piggyback the signal a little bit into a few extra more channels, or would it be completely useless and dud? That's the question. That's the question. Mm. But that's just doing the side. That's my thinking on just improving the side speakers to the back. Um, but what about below surround and well above? Well, above overhead is not really a new idea now. Um, yeah. Um, because if all this was done discreetly, digitally discreet, there'll be a below surround, there'll be a in floor below surround, and well overhead if that floats. If that floats your boat, um, yeah, everything can then flow and move rather than just most speakers sounding static. Like, bloody hell, they haven't got much movement going on in them, have they? Talk about a lifeless surround system. Um, when reality, you don't question it. Most people wouldn't. Most people just hear it and think, but if you really deep listen to it, if you're a real trained listener, you deeply listen, you can hear there's a lot of complexity going on. And you think, how in the world would you microphone record all that? And then you got to then think, how do you strip it all down and then discreetly try and mix it into a soundtrack, into a new breed, you know, yeah, they'd have to change the name from Atmos to something else, unless they call it Atmos 2. Um, mm, otherwise, anything that goes on within the signal, any sounds um, that don't quite relate to what you're looking at visually, continuity that is. It'd be like, say, if water sounds like up here, but when you can visually see it in the movie or something and it's down there, it just wouldn't make logical sense because I've never heard water go up there when it's down there. Unless it's a waterfall coming down, but no, it doesn't sound like a waterfall. It sounds like, the continuity would be out of position. Um, it's like when dubbing stages are doing all this mixing, all the surround speakers are typically they're about try and get my elevation going that way. You know what I mean? So they're all the same level. Just trying to do it. I did it. Did it. Yeah. So they're on the sidewalks about this high up or somewhere. You know. Sometimes if you steer or you mixing using EQ and such, you can give it an impression like it sounds like it's going downward, but it isn't. You walk around, you get too near to the speaker, and then it just sounds like it's coming from up there when it should be something happening down at this level. Yeah, so a logic, a PL2X would be randomly looking at a signal and just steering what it sees. But you, the listener and watcher, because I know what to look for, or you could say the listener and the looker, because I know what to look for, I know what to listen for. And when I see something in these movies and I think, bloody hell, why is that sound going along there? When I've just visually seen it where it appears on screen and it's out of position. Hmm. Yeah. Um, oh dear. But anyway, you can still connect up PL2X to a storm audio and just configure the outputs. Maybe just have two of the sidewall speakers playing the same signal, and then the other one's playing so you got, so the signal would just, move a little bit, but it'd be okay to get it into it's that center signal. Maybe put the center signal, a little bit up uh, on the sidewall, a bit. Fucking hell, why can't I use something like a fucking, it's difficult because um, my coordination with my hands are not quite the same because, this one's a bit flawed. It's shaking this hand. So anyway, so you get the first sidewall speakers. Maybe they can play the center signal from the ProLogic 2X. So you need a Y lead, so it sends the signal to both speakers at the same time. And then the next speakers down, which would be in the middle, they could be the main output from the AVR, and then the next ones down from that would be the side output, and then the ones at the back would be the rear back. And then it's just a case of listening to see whether the steering makes continuity sense, because that's got to make continuity. So if something that you think that is sounding or would appear to be from behind, it has to be in proper continuity, and then what then moves along to the sidewall speakers, or whatever signal it is, and then what you hear, does that make sense in terms of continuity? Otherwise, it'd be probably randomly just moving the signal. It's worth a try. And it doesn't cost anything. It's a free idea. It doesn't cost anything. For those that don't have a storm audio processor, and it's just an ordinary, 5.1 system, you still got an AVR that's got a ProLogic 2X, you can still connect that up, and you've got to use a switching box to do some other things. So it's near to you in maybe the room, or it's not too far away. So you set the little box, the switcher box, to the appropriate channel thing, and then it just plays. I tell you, a Pepsi in the fridge. You put them really close to the back. Yeah, this one's empty now, but this was really iced up. It was like placed really close to the back of the fridge, and it almost got really icy, frozen inside. Otherwise, sometimes you can put them in the freezer for maybe about half an hour. I wouldn't put it in there. If you put it in there longer, an hour, then it's got to freeze all up. And you just don't shake it up when you take it out if it's frozen. Otherwise, it doubles it just makes a mess. But when you just freeze it up, you go, oh wow, it's chilled in the can. Otherwise, it's a lot simpler just to pour it into a glass and put some ice cubes in it. Problem solved. Iceberg, right ahead. Yeah. The Pepsi can was going along, and it got holes in it, and it started sinking. I mean, in Pepsi first, Oh dear. Pour a little bit of water in there from my water bottle. Oops. Oopsie. Just swirl it around a little. Yeah. It's still got a Pepsi flavour there. Amazing. I'm getting water everywhere. Fucking hell, it's like water. Fucking well. Oh dear. I'm not talking about bloody Titanic and expanding the surround and that. I'm getting water all over the laptop. Bloody hell. The laptop's sinking at the bow. um, mm, yeah, so try that. Try that. Can't think of any other things to do to expand. Um, it's, uh, you know, manufacturers really need to speak to people that you know that are, well, they need to speak to me, because a lot of these AVRs that they're making, AVP, that they're making now, some of them are just completely useless. And I think let's not put any, they're following a code by Senti or some Dolby laboratory and or whatever, and it's just it's a bit it's a bit stale in terms of all this nonsense of immersiveness, um, and what the user is, or what most critical listening users are, or what I don't know, wanting to expect something from these processors that obviously some most don't listen to that. They don't listen, you know, listening to speakers and all this at this plain level. That's outdated. That is so outdated. And headphone listening? Oh, please. When we don't listen on headphones. Headphones are, to me, are just something that you just quickly monitor the sound of something just to see what it sounds like, without going out into an acoustical that sound field. Then you think, you take the headphones off and you think, oh, looks like I've got a little bit more to do. Headphones are just for monitoring. They're not really for listening pleasure. Always, we don't go around with headphones on all the time. And then you listen to the complexities of like what a room in each individual room sounds like. This room, it's got so many random objects all around this room. Sound and reflections are going to be completely random, just like it would be outdoors. Only there's not too much of an echo in this room because there's too many damn objects that are breaking up the echo. If it was cleared out, it would have a different acoustical sound to it. It would have a bit of a pinging echo to it. Pinging, not very deep or reverberant like an echo chamber. Echo, echo, echo. That's going to last about several seconds until it decays, until it fades out. Ugh. I feel like going in the room, but it's 4:27 in the morning. I've had some sleep. In fact, I haven't been feeling healthy this week. I've been too bloody thumbs down. So I've been in the room for at least, I think, 3 days now. I think it's almost 3 days. So going in at this hour, I can, but I'm not. So I just want to sort of like give Titanic. Which one do I give now? I certainly wouldn't go for the Blu-ray because that's absolutely atrocious. What they did to the picture color and all that, that's absolutely atrocious. I I think James Cameron's going a bit colourblind. I think he's been doing one too many deep sea dives and probably not doing too much decompression chambering, and I think he's gone a little bit maybe possible. It's possible. That's why he did Mum's Basement AI and told us we're all losers, and you're in your mum's basement. Don't you mean your mum's basement, Mr. Cameron? um, yeah, so I'll go quickly for the Region One DVD, the first release, because it hasn't had the color messed around. It's identical to the THX Laserdisc and it hasn't had the color messed around with. Um, um, Otherwise, usually I would put on uh, the DTS THX Laserdisc. I like to get the AC3 Laserdisc again with it. You know, I'm pretty much sort of like say now done with collecting Laserdiscs because I haven't got any. The rack over there, the shelf is starting to get Laserdiscs, not stacked up that way, but some stacked on top. So there's hardly any space now for bloody Laserdisc collecting. Um, I could grab a few more DVDs or whatever the bloody hell they're little small disc format, and I could stack a few up there until I can't stack any higher because I would need a step ladder or something to stand on. But really, I want to clear all those discs, all I've got that are on my cinema seat. I want to clear all that off because that's going to slightly compress the cushion upholstery slightly. It'll come back up into normal, but because it's got a bit of mild weight on it, like a small baby's been sat on it for like a few years. That's how many years those discs have been a few years or so now. We need to come off there and stack them on the shelf. Um, um, hmm, trying to think what to do with the oh yeah, I like the sound of purring. That little, that little kitten, gosh, it's coming up to 17 weeks. Um, no, she's coming up to 18 weeks. Yeah, she's coming up to 18 weeks. Wow. Had her tomorrow, Monday. I've had her for 4 weeks. Wow. What a that's game changing. That's a game. That's a serious upgrade. Game change. Yeah. Um, I think. Mm, mm, mm. Well, maybe that sensor signal. Maybe that sensor signal on the. Hang on. For those that like, or for those that are just, I suppose, a little bit poisoned by the Atmos overhead speaker thing, because usually, like a PR, usually the DSU, when it's in 5.1 you've got DSU turned on, and you activate those overheads. Again, 6 speakers on the ceiling, they're just doing the same signal. They just do the same signal. They're not doing it like that. But if you were to rewire the whole system and then you connect that PL2X to the overheads, yeah, you can make the signals move. Of course, one would be first one would be the main, and the second, and then the one. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, one, two, three signals. The main signal connects into the first height surround, and the second middle height overhead would be the side surround signal, and then the one at the back would be the rear. So through from a PL2X decoder, and then the signals would just move. They'll be only taking they'll only be taking sound signal. You don't even want to take sound signal from the side surround output, and then you just send it to all those six speakers overhead, in most typical homes, that is, and it will make those signals move and make those speakers go back and forth and whatever. Um, and of course, it's a little bit more than that. What if you want a center middle signals? So yeah, you've got to put another decoder. So it's a very complicated connection of decoders. And then you can get center middle signals depending on what's going on in that PL2X steering. Hmm. Yes, that'd be interesting. Yeah, 'cause it's like unlocking the sound and then having it move and flow rather than just doing the same bloody signal, crying out loud on all the same speakers. I don't know anywhere in the real world where that happens. Unless, of course, it's man-made and it's doing that for a certain purpose. Otherwise, things move, flow. Um, you need a very, very complicated sort of new logic of steering. Because as another thing in terms of bass, bass, or bass is bass, bass. It's a fish that swims, BAS, bass, mutated sea bass, ill-tempered sea bass, ill-tempered sea bass. Because it is ill-tempered when you listen to real bass in the real world, depending on where it is. On a bus, my goodness, the amount of rhythmic vibration, mechanical vibration, and acoustical space bass hearing. My goodness, it's just doing that. It's just completely dancing. It's not doing that. It's doing that. It's dancing around in such complexity. And then you think, how can you get that to happen on a soundtrack in the home? Hmm, that is very difficult because it's usually the surround signal sometimes is carrying signals completely a little bit different than the front. then you gotta think a little bit beyond, like, well, how can I take something from the front, put it along the sides and the back, side and back, round the room, and have it dancing, have it moving. Mm. So it'd be omnidirectional. You wouldn't have, say, maybe too much, to say, like, "I think that signal's coming from the front speakers, isn't it?" You know, you wanna sort of like, "Whoa, blimey." You wanna sort of like, get some eyes, moving, like, "Well, yeah, what you got running on this system?" You know? And you just tell them, "I'm not telling you." Well, I got lots of ideas. I've got lots of ideas, but, you just connect things together and other things connect, and then you apply this and apply that, and, bam, you've got something that's, "Oh, wow. Oh, gosh, I like that. This is quite an experiment." Otherwise, if it was all done discreetly, then yeah, uh, that's got to be tested over and over and over to sort of like see whether it could be repeatable. Because when you go on a bus and you feel all that bus shaking, like even if you go on the same travel, you can stay on the bus all day. At a certain point, at certain intervals, you make notes, whether that be verbal or it's better to do a video. And you just make, so you sit in the same seat and you just make a video diary of what you feel, etc. And you can add RTA monitoring there, so it sees the a certain frequency response and such, and then you just see whether when you come round again to a certain point on that bus route, does it repeat the same way again? I doubt it. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little different. It's not going to be like lightning, but never strike in the same place unless they're aliens. And you start asking, where's the thunder? You see all the lightning, but you hear no thunder. They're aliens. Um, yeah. Mm. Because you could make duplicates of something and they look repeatable. Um, I mean, I've said this before, rambling, ranting. I mean, is the content. I've got weighing scales. I don't know why I don't use them. Just weigh each Pepsi can. Is it the same weight? Because if one is slightly different than the other, then the content is not exactly measured the same. We automatically take one out of phrases and just assume it says 330 milliliters um, of volume of the drink, and what's the weight of it? I mean, is it the same? You know, if you empty all the cans and weigh the cans, I assume the cans are all the same weight. They all look the same shape and design. I assume they're the same weight. Um, in measuring electronics and audio, um, certain outputs of the processor, while there is some slight variable differences, they should all say, theoretically, they should all be zero. You should get zero, 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 zero readings. Sometimes you get in a plus little thing. It's a little, and you think, you're going to be a little bit, say, like, fussy about that, or it might be a little less. It might be a bit of plus it might be a bit better. You think, what's going on there? You know, and it can only be down to components. Like all the components have got to be measured, and when they're all assembled, they should all give the same value readings. But if it's something like that, you just think, well, okay, it's not a problem. That's why you got the adjustment on the processor to in usually, I think it's on the Storm, I think it's in 0.1. Yeah, it's in 0.1 dB steps. It could have been something like 0.001. So it would just tune, not fine tune it, uh, finally, final. I can't even say the word. It would just get it a little bit more with precision. So it'd be, so I know the Storm processor is just, I think, one of the outputs is just a little bit higher than the other outputs. That's not a problem. I just adjust it a little bit. Otherwise, I want value reading the same on the Behringer DCXs. It's probably a capacitor. It could be a resistor. You know, because if you change, if you look at measuring resistors, they usually give a difference in the voltage. Um, um, mm, yeah, so that's my idea for expanding. Just add on and then just apply it differently to the, and it would just make the signal just move around the room and on the sidewalls a little bit different. I mean, Titanic's not perfect with the surrounds. There is a few little kind of sound editorial flaws in it, and that's how I know where they are. But yeah, it doesn't bother me that much. It doesn't bother me. It does sound a little bit weird and strange sometimes, but um, when you first hear a movie first time, maybe in a cinema, you probably don't really notice it. But when you get it at home and then you analyse and you scrutinise it, then you start noticing why is it doing that? And I can see the camera is around at this angle, and you've got this sound on the surround doing that. It doesn't make sense because it sounds like the bloody sound is coming from over the bloody side of the bloody ship. So they got some of the continuity a little bit messed up there. I know James Cameron might be looking the other way, or maybe eating or drinking too much coffee or whatever. Probably got distracted or something, but no. And there's other sounds like a crowd of voices when it's on the decks. Um, they don't quite match. It doesn't sound like there's a load of people running around on the blooming decks, and it doesn't sound like I'm surrounded, with people running around and the sound of footsteps and so forth moving all around on the hard deck floor, which you would clearly hear, and you should hear that sound depending on the scene below. So it sounds like you're looking around, you can hear the sound of footsteps and voices up at different height level, and it sounds like, yeah, see, all those opportunities, all this thing, immersiveness. See, Hollywood's got no idea or clue on the word immersive. It's just it's just a punchline, I think, just to sell something. And most people think, "Oh, wow, it's great. It's a big deal." To me, it's not, because I can notice the flaws in it and thinking it could have been a lot better to what it is now. A lot better than this Atmos. Atmos is just not even the tip of the iceberg. Um, like most some things, technologies that should be successful, I'm kind of staggered how Atmos is kind of like an almost like successful technology, but it is it's technically it's got a lot of flaws in it. And it should never Atmos should have never been put on the market. It should have been looked into a little bit more before being put out into dub stages and cinemas and such. Home, it should have been a bit more thoroughly, thoroughly. Mm, nah, I think they jumped the gun and rushed it a little bit. And they stuck with it for 14 years until that changes. Um, mm, yeah. Anyway, that's enough of the ranting over and out. Go and play with your get that AVR out the cover, whatever. Start playing around with it, connect it up. If you've got two of them in the car, or if you haven't, go on eBay. There are plenty of them, very cheaply now. Believe they're very cheap. But you get the ones that got the RCA outputs. If you know how to do it, then yeah, just have fun playing with it. That's all it is. Boys with toys, playing with things, playing with surround, playing with the